Welcome back to the Empowering Choices Parenting Podcast. Today we are talking about playing hooky with your kid.
So I apologize. I am a complete nerd for like words and stuff. So I had to figure out where the origin of the word hooky comes from. And it seems like it is both related at a glance to the idea of doing something for yourself. Mm-hmm. And apparently there's this phrase to run on your own hook or do business on your own hook.
Okay.
Kind of like doing things for yourself. And then there's also an idea of by hook or by crook, which is theft.
Okay.
So you can envision how doing something for yourself and also possibly stealing could be related to the idea of playing hooky. You're kind of doing it on your own, and then you're kind of like stealing time, maybe.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, absolutely. The other recent definition that I learned was what was it? Filibuster, which is also related to like theft and stuff. But that is an entirely different podcast. Subject entirely, nothing to do with parenting.
So playing hooky with your kid, and when I was looking up this, it's saying basically to be away from schoolwork or any other obligation.
Absolutely the more common,
without permission or a valid excuse. And I think one of the places I'm curious if we're going with this, or what I think about, is sometimes there may be a day that I think, it would be better for me to be with my kid today, but I have the responsibility that I'm supposed to be going to work. And is it a valid reason to take off work to be with my child for whatever reason?
I think you did this like last week. To where
you did.
I did. I forgot.
Did this.
I did. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And Lucas looked at me and said, "Hey, did you get the text message from Josh?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, he canceled today. For childcare. He needs to stay home with his kid." And I looked at Lucas and went, "We could have had our first guest speaker, and he chose not to bring him." So
your kid,
so you did do it.
That is true.
We were like,
this is literally the example of why we're doing this podcast.
We canceled recording a podcast.
Yes.
Because I had to run home to be with my kid.
To be with your kid. Now, and that was kind of a childcare type situation. Right. But what we're kind of angling is, okay, let's say there's no actual childcare reason to be with your kid per se, because that is kind of already in our society, a piece that's in there. We understood, other employers may or may not understand, but it's a thing that happens.
Yep. We tarred and feathered his car when he came back.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, we should.
I'll never miss another podcast. We are tough around here.
Yeah, you better not, because I'm good at that. And so I got it. I TP'd an entire parking lot once to get one car.
Wow.
Because you didn't know whose car it was?
They told me it was their wedding. And they told me I would not be able to get their car because they borrowed someone else's car.
You just TP'd every single one of the
parking
lot.
And so somehow they thought that would make it all safe, and I would just give up. And I'm like, I looked at my buddy, who was my roommate at the time, and I said, now we're just going to need more toilet paper. And so we went and got more toilet paper. We had people who were pulling in late going, hey, don't forget my car too. I want to be a part of this.
Wow.
The best trick would have been if your friend had just like parked in like the business parking lot next door and not been anywhere in the parking lot.
Well, see, someone else that we knew in our friend group said, I got you guys beat. I parked down the road.
He told you where he was at that point.
It was a she, yes.
Yeah. Well, at that point,
that didn't work either.
Came on.
Yeah. And so, we nailed that entire park when they walked out.
Wow. That's a lot of commitment.
It was to see the bride's face when she walked out. It was priceless. I can still see it. But what we're talking about is, hey, I think there's a couple sides to the coin on this piece.
Mm-hmm. Only two sides to a coin, Eric. Otherwise, you're talking about some other object.
Might be dice or something.
If you turn it this way, though.
Yeah.
So are there three sides to a coin?
Yeah, I think there are.
All right. If Derek has more than 4 points.
Josh just saved me in there.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about two sides to the coin.
Okay.
All right. And the first one was kind of what you were talking about with the notes that we had, and, let's say something has happened in your kid's life, and they're going through something that, they're really kind of off, or they're distressed, or they're distraught. You brought up the example, Lucas, of maybe, they had a girlfriend or a boyfriend who broke up with them, and you could just tell, it's really having an impact. It could be a death in the family. It could be, all kinds of different things, a friend moving away. But you just kind of sense hey, this is a hard time for them.
Right.
And we're just suggesting that, that vacation time, personal days, sick time, is that something that we think about as parents as, I could use this?
So let me be, I'll say devil's advocate, whether or not that's the right phrase here. Like, what about the person who says, well, like, I need to be at work, I need to earn money, they just need to suck it up. That's not a good use of resources. Why would I baby my kid that way? That's like inappropriate, like that's bad parenting. What would you say to that person?
Well, what I would say is, maybe your kid actually needs some of your time in the relationship, and it will further deepen and improve the relationship in ways that just going on their own and sucking it up isn't going to do. Because how many kids get to be adults and they're like, hey, back here in that moment in my life, if somebody could have come alongside in some different ways, and I'm not saying that in off hours, in the evening or on the weekend, you can't do a similar thing. But when your kid sees you move a day of work and you use for them, it is a huge impact in their life, and devil's advocate. Well, what if they then expect that all the time? Then you address that. I know, and it's a little different in this situation, but my dad would make me sit at the table until I finished all of my dinner.
Including the lima beans.
Yeah, you had to bring up the lima beans.
That's
a different one. But
not good.
Those things kill plants. Do you know that? They kill plants.
I'm taking notes. That's another podcast.
That's another podcast.
We haven't talked about the lima beans on podcast, have we?
We really haven't. Yes. And so when I was talking with my grandmother. No, I was at my grandmother's house one time, and I was kind of moving around food, and it was stuff I like mixed vegetables. I just did not like mixed vegetables. And she looked at me and she said, if you don't want to eat that, you don't have to eat that. And I was like, really?
Because that wasn't true in your house.
No. And she's like, why do you think you have to eat that? And so I explained that.
Right, because in my house, I do.
Yeah. And she looked at me and she goes, I didn't do that with your dad. And I was like, oh.
You knew something had happened.
And you get this little tingle of power. There's power.
I like how you immediately went to like, this is a crowbar. I can apply leverage in here.
No. It was more like a tank, not a crowbar. It's yes. So I thought, okay. And so my grandma said, go ahead. You just clear. You're fine. At my house, you can always not eat everything. Well, then I'm, my parents, my grandmother takes me back, after whatever that weekend or week. And I see my grandma talk to my dad. And then I got that power tingle.
I said something to grandma, and now my dad's going to change.
I'm reading the 70% nonverbal communication that I can't hear, but the body language, and I'm like, this is gonna be good type thing. And then it was over. And then my grandma, saying goodbye. She wanted to talk to me for a minute, and she said, I'm sure, because I know you saw that I was talking to your dad, and I want you to know that I don't have the last say, of course, on what your dad does with you as he's raising you. I did give him my thoughts, and I told him, this is what will be happening at my house. You boys don't have to eat everything. What he does at his house, of course, that tingle's starting to go away.
Tingle's starting to go away.
What he does at his house is up to he and your mom. And so she's like, I think he heard me, and I want you to know this is not a power play, and this will never happen again. Boom, tingle gone.
Right. Tank
blew up. It's just
like your grandma knew you really good.
Yeah, guess who gave us these things?
But again, for emphasizing, for our audience, know your kid.
Know your kid. Yeah. And know yourself. Know how, because she knew.
That's like cheating, though. If I know myself and I made my kid, then, that's like cheating. I don't have to do as much work, right?
Exactly. And it's not cheating. Yeah. It's just, I was just, I had a session one time with a woman and she was telling me about her kid and I'm kind of smiling and I'm like, listen, I want to explain my smiling.
Sure. Right.
When you say that the child did this and this and this, and you give me these expressions, I see you.
Oh, fuck.
You have a very strong
I know
will,
you well
Sally.
enough, and this is you.
Yeah. And Sally is the name I use because I never had one. I've never had a Sally, as a client. So Sally is always that name. Yeah. And when you give these expressions of how she reacts, I see your mom as to how you have given those expressions from her. Mm-hmm. This has been passed down for
because you knew
couple.
the grandma and the mom and
exactly.
you knew them all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily, no.
It's just that you know where this came from, and so what worked with you, what helped with you. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that if my dad had taken time off of work and taken me out, even just have fun, because that's the other side of this coin.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe twice a year, just like, what?
Right.
Genuinely kind of playing hooky.
Yeah.
Like the more classic definition.
Exactly. I've had several clients over my career that texted me the same day and said, listen, I'm sorry to do this short notice. Mm-hmm. It's the last day of skiing. Our passes expire today. My daughter would like to go skiing on the last day. Both of them were daughters, yeah. And so I just want to let you know. One of them said, "Can I go?" The other one said, "I want to let you know." And I'm like, one, you don't have to ask for permission. You tell me this is what I'm doing. Two, sounds like good snow therapy. You're going to have some good snow. I mean, how do I say no? You come in and talk to me because one, what are you going to hear? I ruined your ski trip. Of the last day, and you had an opportunity to spend some really good time because they were taking time off work. They were pulling their daughter out of school. They were going to have a great time together, and they both did. And if my dad had done that, that would have meant the world. That would be. It's a huge arrow that you have in your quiver of your relationship with your kid. What about this extra time? Because how many of us get year after year after year, and you've got like 8,000 hours
of like my employer gives me paid time off, and what am I doing with it? Yeah.
And a lot of times we use the vacation time, for the most part. But why not use it? And because that would be the other thing that I would say to that, devil's advocate scenario you brought up is you're investing time in your kid.
Right.
How is that a bad thing? Whether they're having a hard time or it's a great moment to just say, hey, let's go to the movies or let's go skiing or I'm going to spend a day with you. You're elevating that relationship in a huge way. If you have more than one kid, please don't just pick when to do this with.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that would be unwise.
That's just not, that's going to further make the one targeted and hated by the others.
I suppose if you had a situation, and again, this is the point of like, there's no like single answer to any of this stuff. If you had one of your kids who was whatever, we'll just use the example of heartbroken over a breakup, and you take a day off work to go be with them, you'd still definitely want to be mindful of the other kids, but
right. Exactly.
Much more so than if it was like, well, I went skiing with this kid, but not you blokes.
Right. And so you're going to come back around because they're going to say, what about us? And you
when you have a breakup with then
I might not present it that way. When I notice me or your mom or however that partnership is going, notice that you are in a hard place in life at times. You can expect that the unexpected might happen. If you're taking the day off to just spend time with them, hey, listen, I took your sister out. She's the oldest. I'm just going by that, and I took her out this month, and I'm going to take, let's just say we have 3. Sure. I'm going to take next month or the month after, I'm going to take this person and we're going to do the same thing. And then 2 months after that, I'm going to take this person. You can just begin to put it on however you want, and it doesn't always have to be, I took time off work. Maybe it's dedicated to this Sunday, we're going to do this.
Right.
I can definitely see a kid deciding to do something like, I'm going to get a boyfriend, and then I'm going to tell my parents it's really important, and then I'm going to break up with them, and like there's a kid who would do that.
Oh, sure there would. And so I would be, so you want to know your kid to where you can get there first and go, listen, if you're thinking about getting a boyfriend or a girlfriend
so
to
that
be
you
able to break up and do it, just tell me you'd like to go to
isn't that
Venti's?
Isn't that such a nice like undercut of that potential power trip of like, I care about you so much that you don't even have to do that.
You don't even have to do it. Just tell me this is what I'd love to do. And then
we'll figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I give enough notice, I can take a regular planned day off with my work and even get in less trouble. See, this is just a win-win if you just tell me now.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a whole day. It can be a half a day.
Sure.
It can be all kinds of different things. Some employers will let you kind of do a couple of hours here or there in sick time or in vacation time. When I work for county, they wouldn't. But, in the way of sick time, in the way of personal day, the sick time and the vacation, you could do that, but not in the way of personal day.
I feel like one of the, there's always people who take things to an extreme. And I know there are some parents who like pull their kid out for everything. I
don't meet a lot of parents like that in counseling work.
I think it's because I have a lot of educators in my family, so I hear all the stories of.
We get a lot of parents. We get a lot of parents who say, "I can't take my kid out of school."
So many,
and so I can only meet on evenings and weekends.
Yeah,
but that's part of this discussion: is what are you willing to give up?
Right. Well, and that's what I was going to say. I feel like I can think of a lot of parents who have the stereotypical. Like they were perfect attendance. They were perfect this, perfect that, perfect that. Their kid may not even care, but they are that. So it's like, grandpa died. You're going to school though, because we're not going to miss one day of education.
I remember so I was a kid who was like kind of the straight A, perfect attendance kind of kid. And I remember literally that happening. Like, I think, it was like one of my grandparents had passed.
Oh, wow.
And I had this internal conflict of like, do I miss school? Right?
Yeah.
Because it was in my mind, that was so important.
Right.
I've since matured and went, nah, man, I attend funerals. Like, good grief.
Right.
But
my experience in grade school was my mom would say, listen, I scheduled you a dentist appointment and I'll pick you up after school. And I was not as much unhappy that it was going to be a dentist appointment, but I was unhappy it was going to be after school.
Because like, why couldn't you have scheduled it during third period?
Right. She's like, I thought you'd be happy that you could stay in school. I'm like, when did you meet me? I mean, it's not that I did bad in school, but I'm like, that was a nice break. And I'm following along just fine, but that gives me a nice break in there. And so then she said, okay, we're going to do this, during school time if
That's
we
why
can.
I loved having braces. Yeah.
Right. Well, in high school,
Lots of appointments.
I was trying to sign.
You weren't kidding, were you, Josh?
You weren't kidding, no.
I heard him like, I loved having braces, and I'm like, oh, sure, right.
Yeah, because like Eric was saying, I was like, and they were scheduled during the day, so I'm like, perfect.
Exactly.
A break.
Well, I was signing out to go outside and wait for my mom for, she was picking me up for some doctors or whatever it was, and the athletic director at the time was following me around trying to guilt me into not leaving during school time because of how important it was to be in my classes and I shouldn't be leaving. And he was a perfect attendance individual when he was in high school and through college and every other time he was in school. And that really is the best thing. I'm just going, dude, I'm not doing it, dude. I'm not doing it. And I'm thinking in my head, my mom is going to have fun with you. And so I went out to the car. He follows me even outside. He's still telling me, like, tell your mom, reschedule this.
Wow.
And I go out to the car and, he's standing out, outside the doors, like with his hands on his hips. And she's looking at me going, what'd you do?
What'd you do?
I'm like, really? I haven't done anything in a long time. What, why is that your first response?
It's 3 days, Mom.
You're right. Well, that she knew. No, I'm just kidding. But I said, no, here's what's going on. And she goes, really? And she goes, that's not his call. I'm like, I know. And she looked at her watch and she goes, we have time.
We have time. So your mom was like, well, she came around to these ideas sometimes. Sometimes my kid is more important than the standard expectations.
Yep. And so she went back in, because by then he had gone back into the school, and she went back into the school after him.
Found him.
And I'm like, oh, I'm going too.
Yeah.
Because there was a certain amount of power trip that was happening on your behalf.
No,
you don't think so?
not a power trip.
Okay.
Because at that point, I mean, it's different than in the grade school. It's like, oh, there's this power. No, it's like, no, I understand this is appropriate parental stepping in, and I want to see the fight. You know, so this was more spectator enjoyment.
Wow.
Because she wasn't going to lose, and she had never lost, and she wasn't a Karen, as we say today. So she went in there and
didn't yell and scream. And,
She didn't yell and scream, but she used appropriate parenting tone. She knew exactly where to catch the guy. Because I think he was still out there in the common area, and she went up to him, and she started addressing the situation, and she let him know that was not his call. Of course, he wanted to argue back that, you know, this should be happening, but she also knew the principal and the vice principal extremely well. Like, they had been her principal and vice principal when she was there. And one of them, because she knew at this time of the day, one of them's going to come through, and they saw her, and they immediately went over there, and then they reinforced, that is not your call. What are you doing? You don't get to tell a student this. You don't get to, it doesn't matter if you had a perfect attendance at anything. And basically told him he needed to knock it off, you know, and they would take care of it, and we could go to my appointment.
Wow.
So we're trying to propose the idea, and I think the way I would want this to get received is, this is an idea you should think about.
Yeah,
right. So
exactly.
Like, oh, well, I have this time at work, but it's only for vacation time. I couldn't. It's like, well, have you thought about using your work resources or any other? I mean, really, kind of broadly, how can you use your resources for your kid? Because one of the things I've been thinking about is like, no one gets to the end of their life and thinks to themselves, I wish I'd spent more time at work. You know, there's people who might get to the end of their life and go, I'm thankful that I spent time with people who are important to me, like my kid, at the expense of my work, maybe. And that's kind of, I think, the brainstorm or the idea that we're trying to throw out and let people consider.
Exactly.
Yeah. So basically, I'm out of here.
Yeah, right.
Go spend time with my kid. So.
Wait, I noticed you waited until the end of the podcast to do that, so that's entirely appropriate.
Yeah. So definitely let us know what you think in the comments. Leave us a like, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And if you think we're entirely and incredibly irresponsible people, you should share this video with everyone that you know to tell them just how terrible we are.
Do it.
It's power.